He ran back to the one his mother always approved of. But he forgot the woman who built his empire from the ground up, not with love letters, but with spreadsheets, silence, and sacrifices no one ever saw. Have you ever given your all to someone, only to realize they were keeping you as a backup plan? Have you ever sat across the dinner table from the person you love and felt like a stranger? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when a quiet woman decides she's done being forgotten. If you believe dignity speaks louder than revenge, like, share, and comment worth below. This one's for everyone who rebuilt in silence. The first time Ronan Haldan noticed Callista Veer, she was standing alone, behind the service curtain at a high-rise tech summit in San Francisco. The room buzzed with millionaires, flashbulbs, CEOs pitching ideas over champagne flutes. But Callista, clipboard in hand, hair pulled back, no lipstick, no eye contact, just quiet precision. She wasn't dressed to impress. She was dressed to finish the job. She coordinated guest badges, checked floor plans, rearranged dinner seating like lives depended on it. Because for her, they did. It was 10:47 p.m. when the speaker roster changed last minute. Ronan Haldan, CEO of H4 Dynamics, had arrived early. She adjusted his placement without asking permission, slid his preferred water brand onto the podium, cleared the wrong badge. He watched her do it all, calm, efficient, unnoticed. When the summit ended, she didn't wait for praise. She packed cables and exit signs. Ronan approached her in the darkened hallway. No cameras, no crowd. "You should be running this company," he said, folding his hands in his pocket, "not fixing name tags." She looked up, calm, unflinching. "Is that a job offer?" He smiled. "It is now." She declined the ride home. The next morning, he sent a car anyway, with 2 cappuccinos, a contract, and a handwritten note. "Let me build something with you, Ronan." She said yes, not to him, to the role, the work, the idea of finally being seen. She never imagined where that yes would lead. By the 3rd month, she wasn't just his assistant. She was managing his press requests, editing investor memos, rewriting keynote speeches behind the scenes. She corrected a funding deck that would have cost him a $28 million deal. He didn't even know she fixed it until after it closed. She never asked for credit. She just handed him the updated file and went back to work. He began relying on her more. Late-night calls, morning strategy huddles, lunch meetings where he'd watch her more than his slides. They didn't date, not in the traditional sense. There were glances that lasted too long, silences that said more than meetings. A flight to Berlin where he insisted she sit beside him in first class. "In case I need to revise anything." They didn't touch. But when they landed, he brushed his hand along her wrist while passing her coat. She didn't pull away. 16 months into working for him, Ronan invited her to dinner, just the 2 of them. No pitch deck, no agenda, just Ronan. Callista wore black slacks and a soft blue blouse. Minimal makeup. Her voice didn't change, but her eyes gave her away. Curious, but not sold. They talked about childhood, about how he was groomed for boardrooms while she sold cinnamon sticks at her grandmother's corner shop. He asked her what she wanted from life. She answered simply, quiet respect, and room to think. By dessert, he asked her to dinner again. A month later, he kissed her. 2 months later, he said, "Move in." And a year later, they were married. A 5-person ceremony. No media, no vows on social. Just a ring, a promise, and silence that felt full, for a while. 2 years into the marriage, Callista started noticing the gaps. Not big ones, small, precise ones, like punctuation missing from a perfect sentence. He no longer stayed for breakfast. He answered calls in a different room. He began locking his second phone. One night, while preparing dinner, he texted her from the study. "Don't wait up." She didn't. She opened a spreadsheet instead and started making a list, not of his sins, of her assets, because she knew this wasn't a crisis. It was a shift, one she could either break under or prepare for. It wasn't the late nights that got to her. Ronan had always been a workhorse. She admired that. What gnawed at her were the intentional silences, the shifted eyes, the moments where he used to reach for her, but now reached for his phone. He still kissed her forehead in the mornings, but it felt like muscle memory, not meaning. She didn't say anything. She just started writing things down. The name of the shell company that technically owned their home. The vague trust he used to register the townhouse in Tribeca, never disclosed, only hinted. The private equity shares he gifted her one birthday for tax reasons. She smiled then, grateful. Now, she pulled out the certificate and reread the fine print. He thought she wasn't watching. He thought she was just the quiet one. He forgot what made her quiet in the first place: precision. They hadn't touched in weeks, not in the way that made anything feel like a marriage. One night, after another dry dinner and a half-hearted good night, she waited until she heard the study door close. She walked into his home office. The second phone was in the drawer. Unlocked. 3 calls. Same number, a New York area code. She didn't recognize the number, but she didn't need to. His calendar did the rest. 3 days blocked off, no meetings listed, no location pinned, but the folder in his Dropbox was labeled Manhattan, and a restaurant reservation popped up under a name she hadn't heard in years, Vivienne Corwell. She closed the tab. No tears, just stillness. That night, she didn't sleep. She organized documents instead. Title deeds, car registrations, brokerage portfolios she'd let sit dormant, digital keys to asset folders. By sunrise, she had 2 folders, one for her lawyer, one for herself. She made a quiet phone call to Kaylin, the only friend she ever trusted with money talk. "I think I need you to refer me to your lawyer," she said. He didn't ask why. 3 days later, Ronan left. He packed a weekend bag, kissed her on the cheek, and said, "Work trip, don't wait up." She nodded. Safe travels. She knew exactly where he was going, and to whom. That weekend, she met with Kaylin's lawyer, a woman named Idrina, sharp eyes and sharper memory, the kind who didn't blink at prenups or betrayal. She looked through the documents Callista brought and nodded slowly. "You've already done most of the work. If you'd like, we can begin the process of asset protection immediately." "I don't want a fight," Callista said. "You won't need one," Idrina replied. "You're ahead of him. He just doesn't know it yet." The house they lived in wasn't in Ronan's name. It never was. He'd purchased it through a shell company he controlled, but he'd added Callista's name to the company for joint asset ease. Quietly, months ago, she had transferred her shares in the shell company to a separate entity, one registered solely in her name. Now, she was the controlling owner of the property. Same with one of the cars. The one she drove daily had been a gift on their anniversary. Registered to her. No lease. Fully paid. The other car, she had no interest in. She left that one untouched. The art, over 30 curated pieces, was appraised and logged, not by accident. She'd done it discreetly for insurance purposes after the wedding. She'd always been organized. Now that skill was her shield. Sunday night, Ronan came home. No apology. No remorse. He smelled like cigars and city rain. He dropped his bag by the door and asked what she made for dinner. She handed him a manila envelope. He opened it. Inside were copies, not threats, not final divorce papers, a draft and a list. His eyes scanned the pages. His jaw tightened. "What's this?" "Everything I've taken," she said, voice steady. "All of it was already mine. I just filed the proof. You're leaving?" "I'm not screaming. I'm not packing bags. I'm not posting anything online. I'm just removing myself from your shadow. Because of New York?" "No," she said softly. "Because of silence." He tried to argue. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just stood there, calm as paper, and said the last sentence that broke whatever illusion he thought was still intact. "You were borrowing me. I'm just collecting the pieces." She turned and left him in the kitchen, envelope in hand. He didn't follow. He didn't speak. He just stood there, staring at the signature page. And for once, Ronan Holden had no strategy. The house didn't feel like home anymore, not because it was cold, but because it had never truly been warm. Callista moved through it like a guest. Every surface gleamed, every chair matched, every corner was curated. But not a single thing inside had been picked by her. The curtains, his decorator chose them. The china set in the glass cabinet, a gift from Ronan's mother, monogrammed with a last name she no longer felt attached to. Even the scent of the hallway, amber and cedar, was selected by his estate manager. It was Ronan's world. She'd been allowed to live in it, not asked to design it. Now, walking past the marble kitchen island where she had left the envelope, she noticed he hadn't touched it. It sat where she placed it, unopened. She didn't ask why. She stopped asking a long time ago. That Monday morning, Ronan acted like nothing happened. He poured his espresso, read headlines off his phone, mentioned a board meeting he had in 2 hours. He didn't mention New York. He didn't mention Viviane. He didn't ask if Callista was okay. It would have been easier if he yelled, or accused, or even asked, "How dare you?" But he didn't. And in that silence, something final clicked in her. They were done, not because she was angry, but because he didn't care enough to fight. When she left the breakfast table, he was still scrolling. She walked into her home office, pulled out her notebook, and drew a horizontal line. On one side she wrote, "Emotions I want to feel again." On the other side, "Things I'm done tolerating." The first column was short. Laughter. Security. Someone asking if she'd eaten. The second list filled the page. That afternoon, Kylen texted her. "Kay, you still want to go through with it?" He hasn't responded, right? See, he hasn't even read the papers. "Kay, that's a response in itself," she replied with a thumbs up. Nothing more. There was a calm in knowing, even if it hurt. Later that evening, Ronan came home late. He walked in, loosened his tie, and dropped his briefcase by the door. "You didn't cook?" he asked, walking toward the kitchen. "No," she said simply. He opened the fridge, closed it, took a bottle of sparkling water. She watched him. He didn't meet her eyes. "Are we not talking about this?" she asked finally. He looked up, slightly caught off guard. "About what?" She tilted her head. Not sarcastic. "Just done. I'm not playing stupid, Ronan. You left for 3 days. Viviane was in New York. You used your private calendar to hide it. I'm not asking for details. I already know them." He didn't deny it. He didn't confess either. "It's not what you think." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that the best you can do?" He exhaled. She was going through something. I was just being there for her. It wasn't a mistake or a lie. He paused. "I don't know." And that was worse than denial. That was the truth. She went upstairs, packed 2 bags, not to leave, but to organize. One with what she owned, one with what she'd leave behind. She didn't intend to disappear in the night. She wasn't running. But she didn't plan to sit around and wait for him to choose between 2 women like she was a backup file. That night, while he slept in the guest room without asking, she sat on the balcony, staring over the skyline. Their floor-to-ceiling windows made it easy to see the world, but impossible to feel part of it. The view was spectacular, so was the isolation. Her phone buzzed. It was a news alert. An article from a luxury lifestyle blog. Title: "Old Flames Rekindled. Ronan Holden and heiress Viviane Corwell spotted leaving Soho Lounge together." A blurry photo. Grainy, but clear enough. His hand on Viviane's lower back, her head turned toward him, mid-laugh. She didn't click on the article. She didn't read the comments. She screenshotted it and sent it to her lawyer with 3 words: "Add to file." By morning, Ronan was gone again. No note, no explanation, just a voicemail. "Board is flying me to Boston. Don't wait up. We'll talk when I'm back." She deleted it without listening twice. She made oatmeal, watered her orchids, opened her laptop, and finalized the asset transfer requests. She scheduled a pickup for the art. She closed the joint account, and she filed a notice of ownership to the H4 Dynamics shareholder registry. Her share of Silent stock was now active. She didn't need his permission. He gave her those shares as a gift. Now they were her leverage. She wasn't angry anymore. She was alert. By noon, her lawyer called. "We've reviewed the latest submissions. The photo is enough. The timestamp matches his travel block." Callista didn't ask what came next. She already knew. "We're activating the breach clause in your prenup. Do you want me to issue it formally or give him time to sign voluntarily?" She stirred her tea. "Issue it formally. Send the letter directly to his firm and copy him personally." A pause. Then her lawyer said, "He won't see it coming." Callista gave a soft smile. "He never saw me to begin with." By midweek, Ronan still hadn't returned. She didn't follow up. He finally texted late Thursday night. "Need space. I'll be back Monday. We'll talk then." No apology. No acknowledgement. She didn't reply. By then, the documents had been delivered. Signature required. Legal receipt logged. She knew when he'd seen them. Friday, 3:42 p.m. He didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't show up. He was silent. And now, so was she. Saturday afternoon, her best friend Kaylin showed up with groceries. "You eating?" he asked, walking straight into her kitchen like he always did. "I'm managing," she said. "You mean skipping meals and cleaning things that were already clean?" She smiled tiredly. "Something like that." He looked at her, then gently pulled a wrapped parcel from his bag. "From my dad's cabin. You used to like this tea." She held the warm bag in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly. She hadn't even realized she'd missed it. She sat down at the kitchen island. Kaylin poured the tea without asking. He looked around. "Place still looks like a catalogue." "It always did." "You thinking of staying here?" "I'm thinking of letting it go." He nodded once. "Good." They didn't talk about Ronan. They didn't have to. Kaylin had always seen through the shine. Years ago, he'd raised an eyebrow when she mentioned who she was dating. "Marrying up doesn't always mean you'll be lifted," he'd said once. Back then it sounded harsh. Now it echoed like prophecy. Sunday, she took a walk. Alone. No security detail. No driver trailing behind. Just her and her sneakers and the feel of pavement underfoot. She walked past parks she used to love. Past cafes she'd forgotten. At one point, she passed a little girl chalking hearts onto the sidewalk. The girl's mother crouched beside her, smiling at nothing in particular, just being there. Callista kept walking. But something tugged. Not envy. Not longing. Recognition. That kind of presence. That's what she used to be. Not just beside Ronan, but inside herself. Monday morning, she prepared. Not for him, for herself. She made a list, short, clear. Finalize company registration for her new logistics firm, meet with her branding consultant, transfer the final assets to her separate holding trust, close the house staff contracts by end of week. By 9 a.m., she was on her second call. By 10:30, her assistant, one she'd hired quietly last month, confirmed the launch date. Callista via Logistics would go live in 4 weeks. Fully funded, strategically placed, and quietly disruptive. No press release, no public rollout. She wanted to move, not announce. It wasn't until 11:12 a.m. that her phone buzzed again. Ronan. One word, text. Talk? She didn't reply. At 1 p.m. he called. She let it ring. Voicemail picked up. He tried again at 2:30. Left a message. "I got the papers. Callista, this is extreme. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I just needed clarity. You're making moves that are, just call me." She didn't. Because for the first time in years, she didn't owe him an explanation. That evening, she received an email from the board assistant at H4 Dynamics. Subject, voting rights update. Silent stake activation. She opened the attachment. Her name was now listed officially as an active Class B shareholder. It didn't make her a decision maker, but it gave her access. And access, when used wisely, was everything. She didn't want revenge. She wanted position. She stepped out onto the balcony again. Same view, same skyline. But something inside her had shifted. For the first time since marrying him, the view didn't feel borrowed. It felt distant, and she was ready to walk away from it, not to disappear, but to build something she could call hers, brick by brick, decision by decision, with no borrowed title, and no man with a last name to hide behind. Have you ever realized someone only saw your silence, not your strength? If you've ever walked away from a room where you were no longer respected, this story is yours. Drop a comment with the word enough if you've ever chosen peace over being ignored. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more powerful, emotional stories that remind you of what you're worth. The first time Callista ever heard the name Vivienne Corwell, it had been slipped into a conversation like perfume, delicate, deliberate, designed to linger. Ronan's mother mentioned her during brunch in the 3rd month of their marriage. They ran in the same circles, she'd said, sipping her tea slowly. Same schools, same charities. Her family still summers in Lake Geneva. Callista nodded politely. She was used to these veiled comparisons, the unspoken reminder that she wasn't from old money, that her name didn't carry weight, only work. Still, Vivienne stayed just that, a name, until recently, until it started showing up in whispers again. Vivienne Corwell was exactly the type of woman society applauded. Heiress to a private art fund, graduated from Brown, once engaged to a Dutch investor, fluent in Italian, wore cruelty-free cashmere, wrote a poem that went viral once, and once upon a time, she belonged to Ronan. It was brief, or so he said, right before Callista entered his life. A misaligned chapter, he'd once called it. We were both too polished to fit. But the truth was, Vivienne had never really left his orbit. Only his house. She was the person his mother followed online, the woman bored wives still whispered about, the ghost that moved quietly behind Ronan's silences. And now she wasn't just a memory. She was back. The article wasn't even on a business site. It was on a fashion page. Buried halfway down in the spotted section, CEO Ronan Halden and former socialite Vivienne Corwell dined privately in Soho, Old Flames or New Spark. The photo wasn't posed. It was grainy, real. Ronan mid-laugh. Vivienne leaning in, her fingers grazing his wrist on the table. There was no kiss, no scandalous caption. But to Callista, the image said everything. You don't lean in like that with someone who feels like a stranger. You don't look that open unless you've closed the door on someone else. Callista didn't rage. She didn't call anyone. She just screenshotted the post and sent it to her lawyer. Subject, moral breach evidence. Attached, the image. Message, timestamp matches his calendar. Proceed. That was it. No screaming, no breakdown, just action. Later that evening, Kylan dropped by again. No call, just instinct. You see the photo? He asked, before even stepping inside. I did. He nodded. You okay? She didn't answer right away. She poured tea, sat at the kitchen island. Then, I used to wonder if she ever looked at me and thought, he settled. Kylan kept his eyes on her. Did she ever give you a reason to? She didn't have to. His silence did that. She ran her fingertip along the rim of her mug. He always said she made him feel like a project, that she wanted to mold him into something her world approved of. Kylan leaned in. And what did you make him feel like? She smiled faintly. Safe. They sat quietly for a few minutes. Kylan pulled out his phone, showed her a draft campaign he'd been working on for a non-profit startup. Callista scanned the logistics, noticed a gap in shipment routing. Add a backup delivery partner, she said. You're running tight on storage space in Atlanta. He smirked. That's why I came. Not just the tea. She gave a real smile then. Not for Ronan, not for reassurance. For herself, because even while breaking she still saw solutions, still added value, still noticed the thing no one else caught. Later that night, her phone buzzed again. This time from a contact labeled only, mother-in-law. She stared at the screen, let it ring twice, 3 times, declined, then turned off the light. She already knew what the call would be. Something like, I know it looks bad, but Vivian's just an old friend. Or maybe, you know Ronan. He gets overwhelmed. Or worse, you were always so reserved. Maybe he needed someone who lit up a room. She'd heard it before, said differently, but always meant the same thing, you're not her. And they were right. She never would be. Because Callista never played for approval. She played for ownership. And she was about to collect everything she built quietly, while they weren't looking. The next morning, Callista didn't scroll. She didn't search her name or his. She didn't check if the media had made her the abandoned wife yet. She didn't need to. Her lawyer had already updated the timeline. Vivian's reappearance documented. Ronan's travel logs verified. Image evidence archived. The breach clause in their prenup was now active. Callista read over the draft that Idrina sent. All factual. No drama. Just legal weight. It stated plainly, emotional misconduct triggering a moral breach nullified joint claims to personal assets gained during marriage. He'd gifted her shares. He'd offered her board access. He'd built his empire beside her, not alone. And now she would claim only what she was owed, no more, no less. And somehow that stung him more than scandal would have. Because Callista wasn't fighting him, she was walking past him. By afternoon the courier arrived. She opened the door herself, signed the envelope. Ronan's signature wasn't there yet, but his initials were marked on the bottom of the first page. His legal team had acknowledged receipt. They were trying to stall. She wasn't. She made 3 calls that day. First, to her interior designer, list the penthouse furniture, sell what you can, donate the rest. Second, to the gallery she'd once partnered with, those pieces we insured 2 years ago, I want them moved. Third, to the security agency, by next week, I won't require your team on site. Thank you for your service. She didn't explain why. She didn't ask for opinion. She simply made the calls. The house she lived in was still legally hers, transferred through quiet ownership. But she no longer wanted to sit in the shell of a life built around a man who now belonged to headlines. She was building something new, and she needed the space. That evening, while reviewing vendor contracts, her email chimed. From Ronan Holden. Subject, we need to talk. She clicked it. 1 sentence, are you sure this is what you want? She didn't respond. She didn't need to explain herself to a man who didn't even deny leaving. Instead, she scheduled a call with her branding consultant and finalized her company's public-facing mission, logistics, led by systems, run by women, built in silence, delivered with precision. That tagline made her smile, because it wasn't just a company motto, it was a reflection of her entire life. Kaylin texted her later that night. K. He emailed me. C. I figured. K wants me to talk to you. Mediate. C. Did you agree? K. Told him, I don't mediate for grown men who don't apologize. C. Thank you. K. He's not scared of losing money. He's scared of losing control. She stared at the message. That was it. That was what had shifted between them. Ronan wasn't used to people leaving him. Not without a fight. Not without begging. He expected her to make a scene, to ask, to plead. But Callista didn't need him. She needed her name, her future, her peace. And she already had all 3. She stood by the window that night, one hand on the cool glass. The skyline blinked quietly, white, gold, distant. In the reflection, she saw herself. Not small, not invisible. Still, strong. Ronan walked into his office on the 46th floor like nothing had changed. His assistant briefed him on his schedule. The stock team flagged a pending vote. Legal sent a notice requesting a signature acknowledgement. He skimmed past the alerts. He hadn't responded to Callista's papers. Not yet. He thought maybe she'd cool off. Maybe this was her way of reacting, calm on the surface, storm underneath. But he expected her to stall, not move. He expected delay. What he didn't expect was precision. By the time he sat at his desk, the CFO had already emailed him. "We've been informed your wife activated her dormant shares. It gives her access to company-level meetings and internal summaries." He read it twice. She hadn't asked for permission. She'd simply followed the paperwork he gave her and flipped it. Ronan leaned back in his chair. Callista never raised her voice. But she had just walked into the boardroom with legal footing. That afternoon, another email came through. This one was harder to ignore. From Callista Veer, subject, transfer confirmed, no body text, just a PDF. He opened it. It was a silent company transfer. The townhouse in Santa Monica, gone. Moved into a separate holding trust under her name. The Midtown Art Collection, accounted for, boxed and scheduled for removal. Her name had been removed from all joint household accounts. No warning, no bitterness, just finality. At the bottom of the document, she'd added a single sentence. "Everything I took was mine to begin with." He didn't respond. He stared at the line. He didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, he wasn't the one who made the first move. Callista didn't wait for a reply. She had too much to do. She met with her designer in the new office space she was renting, a small, corner unit on the 12th floor of a restored downtown building. The air smelled like paint and sawdust. It was perfect. No high glass walls, no curated coldness, just raw space and control. Her name was already on the lease. The bank accounts were clean. The investors, mostly women she'd helped behind the scenes over the years, were lined up to support her. She didn't make noise. She made progress, and she did it without dragging his name through the mud. When she returned to the penthouse that evening, the envelope was gone from the kitchen counter. In its place, a note. "I saw everything you moved. I still think we should talk." She didn't write back. She made dinner, sat alone, watched an old movie with subtitles, went to bed, no tears, only sleep. The next morning, her lawyer called. He hasn't responded to the breach clause, but his team acknowledged all filings. "As of now, you're in full legal possession of the properties, art, vehicle, and shares granted." Callista asked, "Is there anything left?" "A signature," her lawyer said. "Just that." She looked out the window. "No rush. Let him keep the pen." "I already took what matters." She checked her email. Another board meeting notice. This time, her name was copied directly. Her access wasn't symbolic anymore. She was inside the room now, and he knew it. The board meeting was virtual. As always, Callista didn't speak. She didn't even turn her camera on. But when her name appeared on the participant list, Ronan blinked. The chair paused for only a second, then proceeded with the usual agenda: market shifts, quarterly reviews, upcoming investor call. Ronan kept his voice steady, but something in his posture shifted. He glanced at the name on the screen again. C. Fifth Veer, Class B. Silent stakeholder. She said nothing, did nothing, but he could feel her presence anyway, like standing in a room with someone who knew all your secrets and didn't need to say them out loud. When the meeting ended, he didn't log off. Not immediately. He waited. Her name stayed on the screen. Still, muted, watching. Then, disconnected. She was gone. The next day, Ronan received a hand-delivered envelope. Cream paper, thin seal, her handwriting, no return address. Inside, a single page, not legal. Personal, but not emotional. Not angry. No threats. No tears. Just a memory. The night you landed your first major investor, who booked the venue when your assistant quit? Who rewrote your speech at 2:13 a.m. while you slept? Who brought you your favorite coffee that morning, even though you never asked? Who clapped the loudest from the back row, unseen, because she didn't want to make your win about her? That was me. I was invisible for you. Now I'm visible for myself. I'm not coming back. I'm not asking for recognition. I already took it. See fifth. Ronan read it once, twice, folded it, placed it on his desk. He didn't throw it away. He didn't show it to anyone, but he stared at it like it burned. Because it did. Not because she left, but because she didn't need him to know she was doing better. She didn't even need to say goodbye. Callista, meanwhile, moved. She walked through her new office space barefoot. The floors weren't polished yet. The walls still echoed. But she loved the sound. It was honest. Every file she uploaded, every name she added to payroll, every license. She filed. She did it in her name with her money, on her terms. No legacy trust. No shadow empire. Just her. And the company she'd built quietly while everyone assumed she was the wife. Kaelin stopped by the new space with lunch. "You look like a threat," he said, handing her the bag. "I feel like a blueprint," she said back, grinning. They ate on crates. No furniture yet. Just vision. Later that week, her lawyer called. "Still no signature on the divorce packet," she said. "But everything else is locked. He can stall, but he can't reverse anything." Callista didn't flinch. "Let him hold on to the paper," she said. "It's the only thing left he can cling to." When she got home that night, the penthouse was quiet. No flowers, no notes, no apology. Only her, still standing, still rising. Callista didn't follow gossip columns, but that didn't stop them from following her. It started with a blog post, then a side column mention in a fashion magazine. Then the headline hit a tech lifestyle site. "Back together, Billionaire CEO Ronan Haldan and former flame, Vivian Corwell seen cozy in Manhattan." The photo was sharper this time. Ronan and Vivian leaving a rooftop lounge. Her hand slipped casually into the crook of his arm. He was smiling, but it wasn't his press smile. It was real, relaxed. The kind of smile Callista hadn't seen in over a year. She didn't flinch. She bookmarked the link, saved it in her folder titled Closure. Later that night, her lawyer forwarded her an inquiry. "Callista, you may want to see this. A journalist from Apex Quarterly is preparing a piece on the forgotten partners behind today's tech giants. You've been mentioned anonymously. They're asking for a comment." She stared at the email, then replied, "No statement, no correction. Let them wonder." She wasn't interested in defending herself. Let the world romanticize Ronan's reunion. She wasn't part of that narrative anymore. She was writing a new one. At her new office, things were moving. Her logistics firm, CVL, was ahead of schedule. No big launch, no ribbon cutting. But her name was already passing hands in whispers across distribution boards. Export partners, and women-led logistics startups across 3 cities. You know who's backing that? I heard she used to be married to. She built it while no one was watching, and that's how she wanted it. Let Ronan have the flash. She wanted the function. Kaelin met her at a shipping yard outside the city 2 days later. "I talked to your lead contractor," he said. "They're pushing the second phase timeline forward. That's rare." Callista raised an eyebrow. "Good rare or suspicious rare?" He grinned. "The kind of rare that happens when the owner shows up in boots instead of heels." She smirked. "I don't own boots. You do now." "I left them in your trunk." She laughed for the first time in days. A real one. Not the kind she used to offer at galas, tight-lipped and polite. This one was unfiltered. Free. The tabloids kept spinning. Vivian and Ronan reignite old flame. Will marriage follow? Insider sources say Haldan's wife has taken a step back from public life socialite turned CEO. Callista Veer spotted at cargo terminal. That last one made her pause. There was a photo, grainy, zoomed in, taken from a distance while she was inspecting shipment tracking software. She wasn't in design or anything. Hair tied up, plain tee, no makeup. But she looked focused, strong. The caption tried to dress it up as a mystery move, but it didn't matter. She didn't need to clarify. Because when you're building something that's real, you don't explain yourself to people playing pretend. Her lawyer called again. His camp reached out. Still no signature, but they want to reopen conversation." Callista replied instantly. "No." "You sure? He may want to negotiate." "I'm not negotiating. I already left." She hung up. Calm. Back at her place, she made dinner. No chef, no housekeeper. She stood barefoot, chopping vegetables in silence. The city glowed below, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like someone's reflection. She felt like her own light. Ronan saw the headlines too. He saw his name paired with Vivianne's on every lifestyle blog, every curated rich love Pinterest board, every late-night gossip reel. They called them iconic, golden, a second chance at destiny. And for a while, he leaned into it. The cameras didn't bother him anymore. Not when Vivianne stood beside him, all soft smiles and public ease. She knew how to work a room, how to hold his arm without gripping it, how to make the press love them. But Ronan wasn't a fool. He noticed what wasn't being said. No one asked about the business. No one cared about his latest acquisition. No one was quoting his keynote. They were too busy romanticizing an illusion. And behind that illusion, he knew who was working. Callista. He finally opened the private folder she'd sent weeks ago. The one labeled, "You were borrowing me." Inside were receipts. Actual, literal receipts. Hotel bookings she arranged. Flights she booked for his team. Marketing decks she edited before launches. All dated. All stamped. All quietly logged. She had built more than his schedule. She'd built the scaffolding around his empire. And when she pulled it out, he noticed the cracks. Meanwhile, Callista wasn't watching him. She was meeting with one of her early investors, a woman who had once been pushed out of her own company's board after announcing maternity leave. Now, she was helping Callista fund CVL's second warehouse lease. "I never forgot what you said back then," the woman told her. Callista tilted her head. "What did I say?" "You said silence is a weapon when you know where to aim it." Callista smiled. Still true. She'd received another email from H4's corporate office. Subject, updated shareholder summary. Quarterly rights notice. She now held enough to trigger a special review vote. Not to remove Ronan, but to question him. Officially, publicly. She didn't call for it, but she didn't shut it down either. She wanted him to feel the discomfort of knowing someone in the room could unseat him without saying a word. Power didn't always look like a microphone. Sometimes it looked like a signature that was never given. Kalen visited her office again that week. He brought food and questions. "You've seen the news, yeah?" She nodded. "He's parading Vivian everywhere. She's good And you?" "I'm good logistics." He watched her for a beat. "You ever miss him?" She didn't answer quickly. Then, "I miss what I thought he was." "That's not the same." "No, it's not." She stirred her tea. "The man I loved existed. He just didn't last." That night, she wrote one final note, not to him, to herself. She opened a blank document and typed, "I didn't lose him. I released him. And in doing that, I returned to myself." She saved it, printed it, folded it once, slipped it into her wallet, not as a reminder of pain, but of clarity. They hadn't seen her in months. Not the board, not the shareholders, not even the corporate staff who used to see her at events, quietly, standing next to Ronan, dressed in muted tones, nodding politely. Now Callista wasn't beside anyone. She was inside the room. When her name appeared on the agenda for the emergency session, there were whispers. Why is she on the voting list? Wasn't she just the spouse? Wait, how many shares does she have again? Enough to vote. Enough to raise questions. Enough to make people nervous. Ronan didn't look at the screen, not at first. He sipped water, skimmed his talking points, and tried to look unbothered. But his eyes flickered to her name, and stayed there longer than necessary. CV Veer, active Class B stakeholder, there it was. Not as Mrs. Holden, not as a formality, as a participant. The board chair opened the meeting with routine updates, numbers, market trajectory, share performance, future projections. But mid-presentation, A compliance officer interrupted. "I'd like to raise an internal flag. There's been a reactivation of dormant shares within H4's silent tier, one of which has now triggered disclosure rights to certain leadership activity logs." Translation: someone had quietly gained access to sensitive files that tracked high-level company decisions, travel expenses, and private lobbying actions. Files Ronan didn't want anyone reviewing, especially not her. She never turned on her camera. She didn't need to. Her name on the screen was enough. He cleared his throat. The activation was entirely within legal rights. Those shares were gifted. No misuse is implied. The compliance officer nodded. "Correct. But transparency requires us to flag potential conflicts between personal history and current positioning." They were saying it without saying it. They knew, or suspected, that she wasn't just showing up to vote. She was watching. And she knew things no one else in the room ever would. Like how Ronan inflated R&D spend to protect investor perception, or how certain partnerships were redirected through shell entities. She'd helped him structure some of it back when she believed she was part of the future, not a placeholder from his past. Now her knowledge was leverage. She wasn't threatening him, but the message was clear. Don't forget who helped build this. After the call, Ronan stayed behind, staring at the frozen screen where her name had been. Then his assistant entered. "Sir, she left a package." "A package?" "At reception. Personal. No return label." He opened it in private. Inside, a flash drive. No password, just a single file. A video recording from 5 years ago. One of their late-night prep sessions before his first investor round. She was off camera, but you could hear her voice, editing his pitch, coaching him through objections, challenging his assumptions. Then the final line before the video cut: "Say it again. But this time, say it like you believe in what you're building." He watched it in silence, watched himself nod, breathe in, start again. He hadn't remembered that moment. But she had, and now so did he. He didn't text her, didn't call, didn't respond. He couldn't. Because how do you reply to a woman reminding you that your empire wore her fingerprints the whole time? And she never asked for credit, until now. Callista didn't show up at the next board session. She didn't have to. But her presence was felt anyway, through a letter, not emailed, not typed, handwritten. The board chair read it aloud, as required by new shareholder policy. "To the members of the board, I won't be attending today's session. This isn't about power plays or grand gestures. This is about memory, yours. Memory of who coordinated your launch when the tech didn't work. Memory of who caught the early investor fraud before it reached the press. Memory of who took no salary, no spotlight, no headline, and still shaped your internal structure for 5 years. You forgot me. But I didn't forget you. This is not revenge. This is a reminder. Not of who I was beside Ronan Holden, but of who I am without him. C. 5th. Veer." When the letter ended, no one spoke. Not for a full minute. Then the compliance officer cleared his throat and continued with the agenda. But the room had shifted. Callista never asked for a reaction. She didn't track the whispers that followed. Didn't check if Ronan's internal credibility began to shake. She already knew it would. Because in a world where noise ruled, she'd mastered quiet disruption. She didn't need to take his name down. She just needed to take hers back. That night, Kaylin called. "They read your letter." She was eating dinner, curled on her sofa, music low in the background. "I figured," she said. "Apparently, someone from PR leaked it. To the press. No. To an executive mentorship group. All women. They're quoting it like scripture." Callista laughed softly. "I didn't write it for them," she said. "Exactly why it landed," Kaylin replied. Ronan, meanwhile, sat in his office with the letter on his desk. Unreadable, unreturnable, and unforgettable. Vivian entered mid-thought, heels tapping on marble, draped in silken intention. "You're quiet," she said. He looked up. "I'm tired." "Then take a break." He didn't answer, because the truth was, he wasn't just tired. He was outmaneuvered, outclassed, And the worst part, he didn't lose to noise. He lost to grace. Sometimes power doesn't roar. It signs quietly, steps back, and lets the room shift on its own. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever watched someone forget your worth, only to realize you held the real blueprint the whole time, this story is for you. Comment. Remember me if you've ever walked away not to hurt them, but to honor yourself. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more real, quiet power stories that hit deeper than any headline. The apartment was smaller. No marble island, no smart window tint, no 24-hour concierge. But Callista could breathe here. Her keys jingled when she walked in. That small sound made it real. The click of independence. The space smelled of fresh paint and citrus oil diffusers. She picked the scent herself. She chose the off-white curtains, the oak wood table, and the soft charcoal rug beneath it. Every corner had her fingerprint now, not Ronan's interior designer, not his taste for chrome and stone. Hers. She walked barefoot to the balcony and leaned on the railing. No skyline view, just brick buildings, distant horns, a bakery 2 blocks down, and a quiet street lined with parked cars and scattered leaves. She loved it, because it wasn't curated for prestige. It was chosen for calm. No security cameras at the gate. No walls that echoed with things left unsaid. Just her. And quiet. She unpacked slowly. 1 box at a time. No rush. In the middle of folding her clothes into the new closet, she paused. At the bottom of the last box was the wedding photo album. She hadn't opened it in over a year. She sat on the edge of her bed, fingers grazing the leather cover. For a second, she hesitated. Then, calmly, she opened it. Not to cry, to close. The photos were flawless. Crisp, elegant, the way he looked at her at the altar, intentional. The way she looked back, hopeful. They weren't pretending. Back then, it had been real. She wasn't rewriting history. She was just refusing to let it define her future. She closed the album, set it gently on the shelf, and walked away. Later that evening, Kaylan stopped by with Thai food. He walked in like he owned the place, dropped the bags, and whistled at the lack of clutter. "This is the most peace I've seen in a space since we were in college," he said. Callista smirked. "It's the first space I've owned without being attached to someone else's shadow." He handed her a drink. "That's exactly why it works." They ate on the balcony. Paper boxes, plastic forks, no pretense. "You ever miss the penthouse?" he asked. She thought about it. "I miss the dishwasher," she said, "but not the walls." He nodded. Fair. After he left, Callista curled up on the couch. No TV on. Just a book and a lamp and a playlist running low in the background, and the quiet thud of rain tapping against the window. Not loneliness, not emptiness, stillness. She could finally hear her own thoughts again, and not a single one asked, "Where is he?" The next morning, she woke without an alarm. No meeting to rush to. No man beside her brushing his teeth while checking his stock app. No half-greeted house staff drifting in with tight smiles. Just silence and sunlight. She brewed her own coffee, stood by the kitchen window, watched the street come alive. The barista at the corner cafe opened the shutters. A woman walking her husky paused to pick up a fallen glove. Life moved slowly here, and for the first time in years, she wasn't rushing past it. She could see it, be in it. By 10 a.m., she was on a call with her operations lead. CVL's first 2 contracts had cleared funding. One for regional warehouse routing in Dallas, the second for multi-vendor shipment coordination in Denver. Neither job had her name on the paperwork publicly, but she didn't need it to. Behind every system running on time, every driver arriving with margin, every vendor making early drops, was her mind. Her touch, her vision. They'd been calling her the woman who doesn't miss a margin, and she never denied it. A press blog emailed her directly that afternoon. Subject, feature request. The CEO who said nothing but took everything. She didn't click, didn't respond. She archived the message and went back to reviewing internal reports. That was the difference now. She no longer felt the need to be seen to matter. She mattered anyway. Later, she met her designer at the new logistics hub on the south side. It wasn't grand. It didn't have glass walls or a tech tower's gleam, but it had clean shelves, functional layout, concrete floors. Her choice. She walked the perimeter with the contractor, nodded at the placements, and gave one edit on the safety lighting setup. "I'm surprised you didn't go bigger," he said, noting the modest footprint. "I didn't need bigger," she said. "I needed ownership." That evening, her phone buzzed again. Ronan, just his name. No message. She let it ring once. Twice. Declined. A follow-up text appeared 30 seconds later. "I saw your new lease filing. You're serious?" She stared at it, didn't reply, then turned her phone face down and went back to reviewing warehouse intake logs. He still didn't get it. She wasn't doing this to prove anything. She was doing it because it was hers. After dinner, she sat on the floor with a glass of red wine and lit the smallest candle on the shelf. No scent, just fire. She wrote in her notebook, "Some women build from fire, others build from ashes. I built from silence." She closed it and exhaled. The divorce papers were still unsigned. 3 months. Ronan had stalled, dodged, redirected. His team blamed workload, pending clarification, revisions under legal review. But it wasn't the paperwork. It was the power. He didn't want to admit it was over, not because he still loved her, because he didn't like the version of her that didn't need him anymore. And that version? She was permanent now. Callista's lawyer called at 9:12 a.m. "Still no signature," she said. "We've sent 3 formal nudges. His side keeps circling." Callista didn't sigh, didn't pace. She stood by her window, sipping lemon water, listening to traffic hum in the distance. "Can I still move on with my public filings?" she asked. "You can. Legally, you've separated assets. You own your firm. You've executed full control of personal holdings. If he's stalling to save face, it's only his dignity left on the line." "Then shred it," Callista said. A pause on the line. "You're sure?" "I'm past it." That same afternoon, she was invited to a small networking dinner, women in logistics, investment, and industrial growth. No press, no PR stunt, just real conversation over soft lighting and intentional wine pours. Her name was on the private invite list. Next to it, Seren Maddox, investor, strategist, and board advisor for clean infrastructure rollouts. She recognized the name. They'd crossed paths once during a panel Callista helped organize for Ronan's firm. Seren had spoken on efficiency and scale. She'd managed his schedule back then, made sure his slides were in order, his hotel confirmed, his exit car ready. He never noticed her. Now he did. He approached her just as she finished speaking with a logistics director from Seattle. "I've heard your name 4 times in 3 cities, he said, smiling. "And you've only spoken once tonight. That's rare." "I don't like to waste words," Callista replied. "Neither do I." They ended up seated next to each other at the table. He didn't perform, didn't ask about her ex, didn't lean in too close or overtalk to impress. He asked one question. "What are you building?" She told him, clearly, cleanly, with pride, but not pitch. He listened like the answer mattered. And it did, because for the first time in years, Callista wasn't explaining herself to earn respect. She was already sitting at the table, on her own. They walked out together after dinner. A soft breeze drifted between the buildings. He offered her his jacket. She shook her head. "I'm not cold." He smiled. "Didn't think you would be." They didn't make plans. No expectations. Just a quiet, mutual understanding that something solid had passed between them. Not sparks. Recognition. The kind you don't rush. The next day, Callista did something she hadn't done in a long time. She left her phone on silent. No meetings, no press requests, no investor calls. Just her and the quiet buzz of morning. She made breakfast slowly. Eggs, toast, chopped basil from the planter box on her windowsill. No rush, no makeup. hair tied up in a way that had nothing to do with presentation and everything to do with ease. She played a jazz vinyl that crackled on startup. She let the light spill into the kitchen. For the first time since walking away, she wasn't thinking about what Ronan might be doing. She was thinking about last night, the conversation, the way Seren listened, not to respond, not to manipulate the room, but to understand it. She'd spent years with a man who dominated silence, and now she'd met someone who honored it. That afternoon, a message came through. Not from Ronan, from Seren. It was good talking to someone who doesn't fill the space just to fill it. If you're ever up for coffee, low pressure, no tie, just say when, no emoji, no overreach, no assumption. Callista stared at the message, then closed her laptop and stepped outside. She didn't reply right away. She didn't need to. Instead, she walked to the park near her place, the one with the wide trees and peeling benches, where no one was trying to impress anyone. She sat with a notepad on her lap, sketching out ideas for CVL's second quarter expansion, routes, partner audits, onboarding automation. It was quiet. Then, a shadow crossed her page. She looked up. Seren. He held 2 takeaway cups. "You didn't reply," he said. "I didn't need to," she replied. He handed her a cup. "Chai?" She accepted. Clever guess. He sat beside her. Not too close. Just close enough. They didn't talk business. They talked about taste. How she preferred practical candles over scented ones. How he played chess to think, never to win. How she liked reading about design theory more than reading fiction. How he read poetry because he liked how it made silence feel thick. They didn't flirt. They didn't plan a second meeting. They just talked like 2 people with working minds and whole selves. And when he got up to leave, he didn't ask for anything. He just said, "This was good. Let's do it again. Or not." No pressure. And he meant it. Later that evening, Ronan's name lit up her screen again. 3rd call in 5 days. She didn't answer. This time, he left a voicemail. "I've been thinking. Maybe we went too far, too fast. Maybe I didn't see the whole picture. I don't want to drag this out in court. Can we talk before anything's finalized?" She played it once, deleted it, then blocked the number. It wasn't hate. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. The kind you don't announce. The kind that happens when you've built something stronger than regret. The next morning, she met with her team at CVL. Not on Zoom. In person. They toured a new shipment facility she'd been eyeing. It wasn't massive, but it had good bones. Good flow. No fluff. "Think it'll work?" her ops manager asked. Callista ran a hand along the loading dock rail. "It will. We'll move fast and smart. Quiet expansion. Clean systems." She looked over the schedule, the projected numbers, the burn rate. She nodded once. "This is our foundation." Later that day, a junior staffer pulled her aside. "I just wanted to say, the way you lead, it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like space." Callista blinked, then smiled softly. "Thank you. Most places I've worked, we walk on glass. Here, we walk like we own the ground." Callista didn't say anything. She just reached out and shook the young woman's hand. "Then keep walking like that," she said. That night, she got home late. She ordered takeout and sat at the table with her planner. She penciled in a few travel notes for the next month. Dallas, Denver, maybe Chicago. Underneath that, she wrote in small, careful letters. No rescue needed. No permission requested. She drew a line under it. Put the pen down. Her phone buzzed again. This time, not with Ronan. "Seren. No pressure, like I said. But I'm thinking of checking out that architecture exhibit you mentioned. If you're around." She thought about it for a second, then typed, "Send me the time. I'll meet you there." "But I'm not dressing up." His reply came fast. Even better. She looked around her apartment one more time. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. No echoes, no ghosts, just stillness, and something new beginning, on her terms, at her pace. Not a comeback, not a headline, just a woman finally centered in her own story. Ronan sat in his penthouse, surrounded by silence that didn't feel peaceful, just empty. The housekeeper still came twice a week. The fridge stayed stocked. The marble glistened under recessed lighting. But something was missing. Not a person. A presence. Vivian wasn't there. She had left quietly 2 weeks ago. No argument. No scandal. Just a note. You want someone polished. You want someone devoted. But you don't want someone independent. And I'm too old to play the part you need. He didn't fight her on it. He just stared at the folded page for an hour. Then filed it next to Callista's letter, the one that still sat, unfolded, unread, but never thrown away. At first, he thought he could win the narrative. Let the world see him moving forward. Vivian was familiar, publicly adored. They looked good together in photos. He leaned on that. Vivian had too many opinions, too many interests that weren't his, too many questions about his board, his spending, his ghosting behavior when things didn't go his way. She wasn't interested in performing. She wanted partnership, and he couldn't deliver, because he never really learned how. Callista had filled the spaces he refused to admit existed. And, without her, everything was visible now. Every weakness, every missed detail, every decision he thought he made alone but never truly did. His lawyer called again. We need a decision. Her team filed final separation of intent. You either sign now or default by inaction. Ronan said nothing. Then finally, what happens if I don't? You lose the narrative. She's already ahead of it. Has she spoken publicly? No. That's what makes it worse. She's not playing defense. She doesn't need to. She's already moved on. Ronan ended the call, walked to the bar, poured a drink he didn't even want, then sat down at the table Callista once picked out, the only piece in the whole place she'd insisted on keeping, because it was hers before him. Across the city, Callista stood in front of a podium, not in a grand ballroom. A modest event hall with folding chairs and boxed lunches. Women filled the space. Entrepreneurs, new founders, young logistics specialists, mid-level ops managers who'd never had a female mentor before. She looked out at the audience and adjusted the mic. I'm not here to tell you how to run your business, she said. I'm here to remind you that you don't need to be loud to be in the room. A pause. I spent years being spoken over, smiled at, left off emails, praised privately, forgotten publicly. I was told silence meant weakness. She smiled faintly. It doesn't. Silence, when owned, is structure. It's focus. It's strategy. She glanced at the room again, at women scribbling notes, nodding, some, just watching her like she'd cracked open something they'd kept hidden. I didn't leave my marriage because I was broken. I left because I was whole, and shrinking didn't feel like love. Applause followed, not polite, earnest, real. After the event, someone approached her with a question. How do you stay so calm, even when people wrong you? Callista didn't hesitate. I stopped expecting people to treat me the way I treated them, and I started treating myself the way I deserved to be treated. The woman nodded slowly. I've never heard it put like that. Callista smiled. Neither had I. Until I left. 3 years later, her name didn't just open rooms. It built them. CVL had expanded to 6 cities. No massive PR campaign. No woman disrupts male-dominated industry headlines. Just steady performance, clean logistics, strong leadership. Her face was on mentorship panels. Quietly requested, never marketed. Her quotes were shared not as inspiration, but as instruction. And she never once mentioned Ronan's name publicly, not because she was hiding it, because it no longer added value. The final documents had long since been filed. No court fight, no post-divorce theatrics. Just a courier dropping off a signed envelope with his initials. Nothing else. She didn't mark the day on her calendar, didn't post a new chapter speech. She went to work, then made dinner, then read until midnight, and fell asleep on the couch with a half-folded blanket and a candle burning low. Because healing didn't come with fireworks, it came with normal. And peace. Seren was still around. not in every scene, not trying to fill empty space. He came by on Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays, sometimes not at all. They didn't label it. They just let it be real. He knew when to stay quiet and when to press her hand at the dinner table after a long week. He never asked about Ronan, but she told him things anyway, not to prove anything, just because this time it felt safe. One night, as they walked along a quiet block near her office, Seren turned to her and said, "You know what I admire most?" She glanced at him. "You never tried to make anyone small, even when you had every reason to." She smiled. "That's not power. That's pain." He nodded. "And that's what makes you powerful." She stopped in front of her building and looked up. The CVL logo glowed faintly from the second floor. She'd picked that spot on purpose. Not too high, not too loud, but visible enough. She turned to Seren. "I used to think power meant being needed," she said. He raised a brow. "And now I know it means needing no one's permission." The next morning, Callista spoke at a small business summit. Her final words silenced the room. "I once thought losing someone powerful would break me. But the truth is, loving someone who doesn't value you, that's what breaks you. Leaving isn't the hard part. Staying, while shrinking, is." She stepped down from the podium. People stood, not because she asked, because they felt it. Outside, under the open sky, Kalen waited with flowers and a soft smile. "You did it," he said. Callista shook her head, smiling. "I remembered who I was." Then she walked down the steps, into a life she no longer had to explain. No signature made her powerful. No man made her worthy. She had taken everything. Because everything was already hers. She just stopped giving it away. If you've ever had to rebuild quietly, if you've ever let go not because you were weak, but because you knew your strength, this was your story. Drop a comment with "I took me back" if Callista's journey felt like yours. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more powerful, slow burn stories that remind you what quiet strength truly looks like.